Thanks for joining us. We're glad that you are okay after last night's events. Have you spoken with the officer who was shot?
No, but I made inquiries after him and to send my deepest sympathies to his family. He has been released, and I thank God that he's alive, and he's a hero. When you consider opening fire on a very well-coordinated attack, Jake, it was done exactly after the event was over. So people would be funneling out in a small area, and if you open fire on close to 300 people, imagine the carnage. So kudos to the Garland police. They were superb. Yeah. And of course, we had to come with our own private security team because that's now the price of freedom of speech in the United States in 2015.
Well, I want to get to the event in a second, but I do want to ask you about the security because a source tells me that a joint intelligence bulletin titled Mohammed Art Exhibit and Contest in Texas on 3 May likely to prompt violent extremist reaction abroad, violence less likely at home. That was the name of the bulletin. And that bulletin said that the event that you were holding carries a certain risk of being targeted by terrorists because of the recent attack at Charlie Hebdo. Had you been in touch with law enforcement at all before the event about the risks in holding this event?
Well, I have been in touch with law enforcement because, as I'm sure you know, any of us that engage in this work in defense of freedom of speech get death threats on a regular basis. So yes, I had been in touch with them, but no, I had not been made aware of that bulletin. And clearly it's not the Charlie Hebdo attack. These attacks on free speech now are ever since 2001 and prior. And this event we had, you know, the reporter on the story, Pamela Brown, couldn't identify it without saying controversial and controversial and controversial and controversial. Free speech is controversial. I don't think so. Shooting people for free speech is controversial. This was, well, no, I'm sorry.
Shooting people is horrific. Controversial, it has to do with words, and I would say like shooting people is potentially murderous, and it's much worse than controversial.
Yeah, I understand it's much worse than controversial, but the shooting is not even described as that. But our event in defense of free speech is.
Well, look, let's just get this off the table. Nothing justifies the attack, the violent attack. There is no justification. But I do want to ask you about your reasons for holding the event, if you'll permit me. Charlie Hebdo ran its magazine in the name of satire and criticism, and the magazine continues to attack every religion, every political party, all sorts of leaders. What was the purpose of holding an event that specifically focused on drawing the Prophet Muhammad?
Well, that's where the war on free speech is coming from. And it's so interesting to me how you describe this French weekly. When I was a kid, there was a magazine called Mad Magazine, and it lampooned everybody, and it was funny. And nobody took it so deadly seriously. And that's where we are, and I think it's wrong. Why this event there? Because in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo slaughter, Muslim leaders held a Stand With the Prophet conference supporting the Sharia restrictions on free speech, against free speach, and they weren't even buried yet.
Well, let me
okay, wait, you asked me a question.
Okay.
I just want to answer you fair, completely. And so we held an event in defense of free speech. The objective was first to show depictions of Muhammad over the past 400 years, where they didn't slaughter people for drawing them in pieces of artwork. So we know that this is being used by Islamic supremacists who seek to impose the Sharia restrictions on free speech in the West. Right. And it's working. It's working because the media won't run cartoons. If the media had run the cartoons in 2005, if all the media had, there would never have been this power given to it. Now, anyone that runs cartoons is targeted. Okay. But if all the media had run it, you couldn't kill everybody.
Well, that's a separate issue, but I want to ask you a question about the specific event, because this morning, when you talked to Alison Camerad on New Day, you made sure to distinguish between peaceful Muslims and those who are pro-jihad. And you said you're against the ones who are pro-jihad, but you have nothing against the ones who are peaceful. But who do you think was offended by your event last night? Do you think it was only the ones who were pro-jihad, or do you think maybe you also offended some of the peaceful Muslims you referred to?
If I offended some of the peaceful Muslims, that's the price you pay for living in a pluralistic, free, open society. Inoffensive speech needs no protection. Offensive speech needs protection. It's not the 8th Amendment, it's not the 9th Amendment, it's the First Amendment. It protects all speech, and most of all, political speech, because who would decide what's good and what's forbidden? The Islamic State? These two gunmen? You know, remember, this contest was for political cartoons, Mohammed cartoons.
Right.
Yeah, political cartoons are political critique. And with political Islam, which is imposing restrictions on free speech, we are lampooning it. And what's interesting is the winner of the contest is a former Muslim, Bosch Fostum, who drew a brilliant cartoon. We should be able to have this conversation. We can't have an event discussing or showing Mohammed cartoons or a Mohammed play. This is America. This is not Saudi Arabia.
Well, I don't think I'm certainly not questioning your right to hold the event. I think there might be some who are questioning the wisdom of it, but I understand what you're saying. Pamela Geller, thank you so much for